Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So I wanted to cover a couple of stories today. I thought it would be easier to just hop on here and chat with you guys about what's going on. Very, very disturbing times indeed that we're living in. And I wanted to start off with the incident, the tragic incident that happened over on Rhode Island. And yeah, it's obviously first information I seem to find is always on X. The media, they don't really divulge much, and you assume it's because they don't really know much. But the people on X seem to come with more details. So we find out that there's been an incident involving a family at a hockey match, and shots were fired. And at first, they were reporting that there was a lot of people probably assumed it was a child who was taken out. So a mother and child is what was coming out first. And now we find out that it was a man who shot his ex-wife and his own son. And the son, I believe, is 23 years of age, was 23 years of age. So we're going to look into the details about that. And it turns out this person identified as transgender, and that it's been that way for a while now. Apparently his trans identity caused a lot of issues, within the family. So we'll look into that. So let's take a look at this news clip, one of the first ones to come out about the incident. If you can hear me, put a 1 in the chat. Still waiting for some more people to come in. Yeah, I know. Pony Boy Garfunkel. Definitely frustrating times that we're living in. I sure am frustrated. I suspect social media has exposed me to too much. Yeah. A high percentage of people value emotion over sound reasoning. And then we have the, vapid tribalism. I am frustrated. Yes. A lot of people can relate to that. A lot of people can relate to that. And it's definitely a good idea to take some time off social media. That's for sure. Or even just delete certain apps from your phone. And thank you for joining. Thanks, everyone. So glad you guys can hear me. Oh, so glad you can join us, Venus. That's really sweet. So let's take a look at this news clip. Oh, I keep pressing the wrong thing. Oh my goodness. You think I would know how to do this smoothly by now?
To another big story we're following today, police in Rhode Island say the mass shooting at a high school game was a targeted attack. A gunman killed 2 people and then critically wounded 3 others before dying of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. This happened in Pawtucket, about 5 miles north of Providence. Here's how one of the players on the ice described what happened.
I think it was like mid-play. I heard a couple gunshots go off. I thought it was balloons at first. It was loud, and then it kept going on. So I ran right into the locker room after I left off the ice. You don't know what it feels like until you're actually in it. It's very scary.
CBS News national correspondent Lilia Luciano joins us now from Pawtucket, Rhode Island. Lilia, I know you spoke to another player there who was also at the rink when this shooting happened. I just can't even imagine how scary and frightening this would have been. But what did he tell you?
Yeah, that's right. Good morning, Chanel. He was pretty shaken still when we spoke with him late last night. He was telling me that he just kept thinking about whether his parents were okay once he ran with the other players into the locker room. Here's a little bit more of what Silas Core told me, and we'll give you more details about the latest.
I remember hearing the first shots go off, and everybody wasn't sure if they were actual shots. We all thought it was like a door opening. We went to the locker room, where we came out of, and the second we went in, everybody was barricading the doors. It was pretty scary. I'm still feeling shaken up about it. It was pretty horrible. I still don't understand why somebody would do that.
So he was telling me, Silas, that his dad was one of those people who kind of took charge and ran to where the locker room was and to make sure that everybody was okay. He also told me that both teams were there together, that it was comforting to know that all the players were there kind of holding each other. We have been continuing to pursue more information about this. Overnight, there were some reports about the shooter who was identified by police as 56-year-old Robert Dorgan, who also goes by Roberta Esposito. We are hoping to get some documents that our local affiliate has in the next few minutes, but apparently there were several family disputes having to do with the shooter's gender identity, where there had been threats by the father-in-law. So we're looking into those details, but there have been some reports that match what the police have been saying, that there were family disputes. What we have learned is that the victims who died, one person died at the scene where we are, this ice skating rink, is a family member that both were adults, and somebody else died at the hospital. There are 3 more people who remain in critical condition, and it seems that all the victims were related, according to what police said, that this was a targeted event where the shooter apparently targeted family members and potentially stemming from these disputes. We'll continue reporting throughout the day and bring more details as we learn. We hope that police will have some briefings soon.
Yeah, so initially they were saying that, the person fired into the crowd and that kind of thing, but now they're saying it's only family members who have either been killed or who are critically injured. I believe it's the grandparents, because one of the daughters posted on social media a GoFundMe for the grandparents, and they are in critical condition. So, keep them in your prayers. And these are the victims who lost their lives. The son, Aiden, 23, and the ex-wife at the Lynch Arena in Pawtucket. The wife, 52-year-old Rhonda. Very, very sad indeed. And yeah, absolutely senseless. And they're saying this is an isolated incident, kind of giving the impression that, it's not something that the public, that, people targeted were family members. However, this is somebody coming into a public ice rink where people are playing hockey. There's a team, teams are playing, people are going there to watch a hockey match. They're there with their families, and this person is firing a weapon. So obviously it did endanger the public as well. And some people are saying, this is domestic violence, kind of trying to steer people away from focusing too much on the whole trans identity. That this is an incident of domestic violence, an isolated incident. But the fact is, when it comes to these situations with men identifying as trans, within, men who are married to women who suddenly start identifying as trans, from what I've been learning while covering these stories, while speaking to people like Uta Hagen, and the research she has been doing and her own experience, and I will actually have her on the channel to talk about this. Have to reach out to her about that. It's domestic violence goes hand in hand. Not always, but some sort of either violence or emotional abuse, financial abuse, that goes hand in hand in these marriages where the man decides to start identifying as trans. And it could be because the woman doesn't accept it, or it's just he's dealing with his issues and it affects the whole family, especially the wife, who they refer to as trans widows. So it's not something that is separate from the fact that this person identified as trans. And I want to talk about, what are we normalizing these days? Well, I think we need to take a step back and reassess what we've tried to normalize, what society has tried to normalize over the years, and rethink that. This person went into Cabela's, I believe, and bought ammunition just the day before this incident occurred, dressed up like a woman. See if I can find that for you guys. And then I'll get to your comments. I think this is it here. So we'll look at some more reports about how it was reported, but I think Redux reported this, yes. So, police have identified the suspect responsible for the horrific shooting at Lynch Arena in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, Robert Dorgan, who also went by the name Roberta Esposito, shot 4 family members and a family friend at a youth hockey game, killing 2 and injuring 3 others before killing himself. Some locals have reported that they saw Dorgan purchasing ammunition at a Cabela's just yesterday, the day before this incident. Now, I don't know if that's 100% substantiated, but clearly this person is here at a store, a gun store, or a store that sells weapons, that sells guns. And, we need to these people who own these stores, they have the right to refuse to sell to anybody who they want to. Any business owner, they have a right to refuse service. And I think they need to exercise that right when someone walks in dressed like this. Now, I have said, you probably find videos of me saying, dress how you want, but you can't change your sex. Now, when I have said that, I know it's a double standard, but I'm really referring to girls who are like tomboys. Girls who prefer to wear trousers and, who don't wear dresses and skirts. They dress more masculine, I guess. So, I've said that in reference to tomboys, essentially. And yes, a double standard, but I don't think when somebody is displaying their fetish, that we should normalize that, or we should turn turn a blind eye and act as if that's perfectly normal. It's not. When someone is displaying their fetish, I think we need to normalize calling it out and saying, this isn't appropriate. Dress appropriately. And if someone's walking into a gun store dressed like that, a man walking into a gun store dressed like he's wearing his fetish for everybody to, on display, I think they have the right to refuse that person's service. This is just my opinion, but I think we need to stop normalizing this. And obviously there's deeper issues surrounding this, but we need to know when to spot the signs, and clearly there were huge red flags. And this person, you can kind of track their social media activity. And Fox News reported that he was defending, is it Sarah McBride, or Thomas is his real name? This transgender congressman. Rhode Island transgender shooter Robert Dorgan, Roberta Esposito, posted a chilling threat on X just one day before murdering his wife and child at a hockey game, then turning the gun on himself.
One day before he opened fire, he was defending trans Congresswoman Sarah McBride. He wrote this in part on X: "Keep bashing us, but do not wonder why we go berserk." So they're looking into all of these things on social media. As investigators say, it was a targeted attack. That's one thing they know for sure. Sources telling Fox it was a dispute within this family that led to the tragedy. So the gunman shows up, kills his ex-wife and one of his own kids at the hockey game. Police say 3 others are in the hospital fighting for their lives. And there really could have been more people that were killed, but a good Samaritan stepped in and tried to take this gunman down. Watch. One day before he opened fire, he was defending trans Congresswoman Sarah McBride. He wrote this in part.
Yeah. They're saying it's an isolated attack, but if it wasn't for that hero who stepped in, who knows how many more lives would have been taken. Someone stepped in, and then apparently the shooter had another weapon on him and used that to ultimately take his own life. I'm betting that Robert was a bully from way back. I mean, yeah, the signs are, the red flags were there for the longest time. And of course, we get people who always want to try and distance the crime from the identity. Naturally, that's what we're seeing an attempt to do that. But I think it's something that we need to start discussing. So the daughter was interviewed while she was walking out of the police station very soon after this incident occurred. And everybody, of course, really felt for her and were even questioning whether they should have been interviewing her. But she said, "He shot my family. If you have a loved one who you think is sick, trust your gut." The woman whose identity could not be confirmed by the Daily Mail added. So it's believed that this was the daughter. So she said, "He shot my family. He's dead now. If you have a loved one who you think is sick, trust your gut." Wow. And apparently just a couple of years ago, 2024, this is what he tweeted. "Not all trans people are evil. Many of us are otherwise normal human beings living our lives bothering no one." Wow. And of course, people are saying that did not age well. So we're the only generation of Americans that elected a president who was found guilty of felonies, found guilty of this. Okay, this will always be our place in American history. Oh, wow. Well, let's stick with the topic. There's a lot I could say about that, but definitely want to stick to the topic. Family annihilation, I think that's different from DV. Okay, yeah. Family annihilation, well, yeah. I think they're all, it's definitely related. It starts from, it all goes hand in hand, I would say. And unfortunately, if you speak to police officers, they say that domestic violence cases or DV cases have to be YouTube friendly. They're some of the most dangerous calls that they receive, some of the most dangerous incidents that they've ever had to face in their careers. A lot of them say that DV cases are some of the most dangerous. And I've seen, you watch certain documentaries and that you see cops, they attend these calls and the perpetrator has a weapon on him. So it's not just you're thinking this is something where we're dealing with gang violence or, where you would expect this sort of violence to occur. This is happening in people's homes at the hands of violent domestic abusers. So what I was going to show you, I have to look for that now. While you're watching, this is one reaction to the story.
Shooter in the Rhode Island shooting was a transgender man by the name of Robert Dorgan. Another mass shooting by a transgender in less than a week. The man named Robert Dorgan shot up an ice rink during a high school hockey game in Rhode Island, taking the life of his ex-wife and his own kid. Just last week, there was a mass shooting out of Canada with a transgender. Here's how New York Times is reporting the Rhode Island one. The shooter's birth name was Robert Dorgan. The person also went by the name Roberto Esposito. That's a weird way of saying a transgender. Why are media outlets using this vocabulary to describe the shooter? It was a man, a gunman, not a gun person. At what point are we going to have a serious discussion about transgender culture? How many more people have to get hurt because people are afraid of offending these clearly mentally ill people. And yes, there's clearly a connection between being a transgender and being mentally ill. I don't think anyone would deny that. The last thing we should be doing is be pumping these mentally ill people up with drugs that are affecting their brains and hormones. And they shouldn't have access to guns either. These men keep having serious outbursts of violence. Men are not meant to have these surgeries and pharmaceutical grade estrogen be pumping through them. I feel like I just made this exact video last week. I hope something changes in the near future, and I'll be praying for the victims and their families.
So, this is the conversation that people are afraid to have in situations like this, but it's definitely important. And I wanted to share some reactions, some tweets that I thought were very interesting. So we have someone posted that there is not a trend of trans people being mass shooters. It is largely white men. People on the internet are trying to force an untrue narrative. It's jarring and disgusting to watch. It's not true. Like, I do not understand. So when somebody has an identity, their race goes out the window and their biological sex goes out the window. This is literally a white man. I don't understand that sort of reasoning. It's as if as soon as you have an identity, you are a protected class in your eyes. You should be a protected class, and you are automatically an oppressed minority by simply saying you have a gender identity. And I guess this also applies to those walking around with a fetish. Are they a protected class, and we need to treat it like a social justice topic, this walking around with a fetish? So yeah, I don't understand that reasoning. And Tiffany had a really good response. This white man who identified as trans, dressed like his impression of a cheap hooker at his own son's graduation, just murdered his son. You can pretend this isn't happening, but we're not going to pretend with you. R.I.P. Aidan Dorgan. And this is how this individual attended his son's graduation. Now, I don't know about you, but if one of my relatives attended, one of my male relatives attended my graduation like this, it's as if we're not allowed to be embarrassed anymore, to say that this is embarrassing. This is humiliating. That's because they're trying to normalize this. And I think that has been a huge mistake, especially when this isn't even just dressing up as a woman. This is dressing up as a, like Tiffany alluded to, a very overtly sexualized interpretation of what a woman is in their eyes. And I think that's very insulting to women, and it's inappropriate. And at the very least, we can say that this is inappropriate for a graduation. Very, yeah. What we're seeing in the news is the effect of wrong sex hormones on human bodies, yes. It's not like a recreational drug. Messing with hormones is not like doing a line at a party. And we're not even talking about, yes, exactly. We're not even talking about, the effects it has on somebody taking cross-sex hormones and all sorts of medications in the name of transitioning. What effect does that have on the brain? What effect does that have on their emotions, their mood, how they respond to stress? All of these factors as well. So what it said about family, Dorgan also sparred with multiple family members over his gender identity. I think that says according to court documents. He told police in early 2020 that he had recently undergone gender reassignment surgery and said his father-in-law wanted him kicked out of their home because of it. Dorgan claimed to officers with the North Providence Police Department that his father-in-law threatened to have him taken out by an Asian street gang if he did not move out of the residence, according to the filings. Dorgan, who at the time told police he had been living at the home for 7 years, also claimed his father-in-law told him, there's no problem. There's no GD way. A tranny is going to stay in my house. The father-in-law was charged with intimidation of witnesses and victims of crimes and obstruction of the judicial system, but prosecutors later dismissed the charges. Wow. Other court records show Dorgan had also accused his mother of assaulting him and acting in a violent, threatening, and tumultuous manner, leading his mother to be charged with simple assault and battery and disorderly conduct. The case apparently caused further contention between Dorgan and his father-in-law, with Dorgan telling police his father-in-law told me that if I did not drop the assault charges against my mother, that further retaliation could be expected, and that was another reason to have me killed. The case against Dorgan's mother was also eventually dismissed. Wow, so clearly a lot was going on within that family related to this person identifying as trans. And this is the outcome now. He was the one who ended up murdering a significant number of members of his family. And I guess, the questions are going to be asked, could this have been prevented? What could have been done? And that is that's the question that people are going to be answering for a long time. Yeah, definitely insulting to women, unbelievable. And he acted out of his fetish in front of his kids. It is so appalling and twisted. I agree, Lacey. I agree. So that's where we're at now with that story. Very, very sad. Just wanted to see what they are saying about the grandparents and the GoFundMe before we move on. I think it was at the bottom here.
I came to teach in...
Oh, I won't bother with that. It's just a commercial. So let me just make sure you guys can see this. Okay. So Aiden's grandparents were among those injured in the attack. They are currently in critical condition, fighting for their lives. And a GoFundMe page established by Rhonda's stepdaughter. Okay. Her stepdaughter, Amanda Wallace Hubbard, revealed. An online fundraiser has now been set up to support Dorgan's remaining children, Ava and Colin, with basic living expenses as they continue their education. So, I'll definitely be praying for the grandparents to pull through, to make a full recovery, and praying for the surviving children, which is just absolutely heartbreaking. It details how Aiden's grandparents were among those injured in the attack on Monday and are now fighting for their lives in the hospital, as Ava and Colin are now facing the future without their parents and older brother. The weight of this loss is something no one should ever have to bear, especially at such young ages, Dorgan's stepdaughter from another relationship wrote. Despite the pain, Ava and Colin are determined to continue their education and build a life that honors the memory of our loved ones. And it's so far raised $131,600. So if I find the link for that, I'll post that. They haven't provided a link, but I'm sure prayers will be appreciated at this time. I mean, I can't even imagine. Very, very sad indeed that they've been left to pick up the pieces. And then on top of that, they're worried about still, losing their grandparents, but let's pray that they pull through. And yeah, so see if we've got any more comments on this before we move on. All the traumatized witnesses, exactly. This isn't an isolated incident kind of implies that no one else was affected outside of the family, but clearly people were. Even just seeing the video, those poor, kids on the ice, for goodness sake, they were terrified. They were so confused when the shots were fired, not knowing what they were hearing. And then when it became apparent, they fled, obviously. The people in the crowd. And, thank God for that hero who intervened, because in situations like this, people understandably are going to flee. And he intervened and prevented more lives being taken. So this is something, as we've seen, even doing the story in Canada recently, it just seems if they want to take themselves out, they're taking other people with them. These monsters who go and commit these crimes, their aim is to take other people with them when they take themselves out. And that's absolutely terrifying. We can't just say it's based on one, for one reason. There are a number of reasons that led up to this, a number of factors, of course. So we can't just say it's just one particular factor. But I think we should stop normalizing people walking around showing their fetish to everybody at graduations and, when they're with their kids and things like that, buying guns and ammunition. We need to stop normalizing that. So that's all I've got to say about that situation. So I wanted to react to this video, actually, before we move on. See if I can find it.
I'm a cis woman. I'm a woman.
She's a really great content creator. She speaks about issues pertaining to women and all of these sort of topics. So we'll react to this before we move on to the next one.
I'm not a cis woman. I'm a woman. However, Jonathan Van Ness from Queer Eye jumped into my comments to tell women how bigoted we are for voicing our assertions. He insisted that women are cis women no matter how we feel, that if our daughter encounters male genitalia in the women's locker room, the solution is not to protect her privacy, is to give her a talk before him to let him know that that's okay. He insisted that women should not be concerned about men and women's restrooms because men are most likely to commit crimes against women. He also referred to abortions as forced births. If you choose to support him in his comedy tour spanning 7 countries, like he mentioned, you deserve to know exactly who you're supporting. Because when a woman says, no, I don't want this, and someone insists on doing it anyway, what do we call that? Everything I've said here is based directly on Jonathan's public comments that he seemed proud to leave. He also said that I was craving attention. So here's the attention, just for you. Women should not have to see male genitalia in their private spaces. Women should not have to justify their boundaries. And women should not be called bigots for saying I'm uncomfortable. This is not normal, and we will not let you normalize it.
Very well said there. And I've done a video about him before, Jonathan Van Ness, mansplaining why women should be okay with men competing in our sports. Why we should be okay with it and shouldn't complain. So yeah, that's all he's about. And it's to tell us how we should feel and how we should respond to male genitalia in the locker room is clearly he doesn't respect women, yet he will claim to be all about women, no doubt, as a lot of these people, claim to be. And he's walking around, like she was saying, dressed the way he dresses, and it isn't normal. and we shouldn't normalize it. No way should we normalize that. Yep. Very condescending. Indeed, Heidi. Yeah, very condescending. It's very infuriating. Yeah, agree with her 100% there. So I wanted to talk about the transgender wrestler. Did a story about that the other day. A female wrestler who competed against this person, not even knowing. I just can't even believe they did this. They didn't even tell her that she's going to be competing against a man. She found out after the wrestling match, and she reported SA had occurred during the match, during the bout. If you see the video, he reaches in between her legs essentially, and you know, she's alleging sexual assault at the hands of this individual. He has now been removed from the competition. Well, initially we thought he had been removed. He withdrew himself. People were even commending the WIAA, the Washington state sporting body, and, you know, saying they did the right thing. But no, he withdrew himself. Good. I'm glad he's out of the competition. You know, he's been exposed. His identity is out there now. Apparently he has scrubbed his social media, and he's withdrawn himself from the competition. Yeah, Rogers High School is where this occurred. And I'm happy to say at least the Department of Education are now investigating this, how do you pronounce it? Puyallup, I believe, Puyallup School District. They're being investigated for violations of Title IX, and also, obviously, they didn't report this incident for 2 months, and reporting even, you know, alleged sexual assaults is mandatory in the state of Washington. You know, for school who receives these reports, they have to report it. The police are now involved and they are investigating the matter. So I'm glad it's being investigated by the police. So let's take a look at an update in this story. Just see your, yep. And that's how this person should never have been in a women's competition to begin with, obviously. And to think that he had to withdraw himself, like he was given the opportunity to withdraw himself. They should have realized their mistake at least after such serious allegations came out. Even then, they didn't withdraw him from the competition. Now, how disgusting is that? You're still allowing him to go on to compete against other women further up into the competition. I just do not understand what needs to happen before they say, you know what, perhaps we made a mistake allowing this. What needs to happen? And that's a very scary question, because it's as if they have no limit to what women and girls have to go through before they admit that this is a huge mistake and it's going to have huge repercussions. So a trans-identifying male wrestler who was accused of essaying a female opponent during a high school match has withdrawn from the state tournament. So this is the Washington Interscholastic Activities Association have confirmed this to Outkick on Monday evening, that the male student athlete qualified for the state wrestling championships. No, he didn't, but has chosen to not compete. The athlete was replaced by the 8th place finisher, a female, from the qualifying tournament. So you restored the tournament to what it should have been, in other words. And it's Callie Keeler, 16-year-old sophomore at Rogers High School in Puyallup, Washington, says she was violated during a match by a trans-identifying male athlete in the 190-pound weight class. This is the male, he's a novice wrestler, and he won 4 out of 5 matches or bouts. So I wanted to get to the Department of Education and what they're saying. So thankfully, the Pierce County Sheriff's Office confirmed a criminal investigation is now underway. The matter is under investigation. As such, we cannot share details or discuss specifics. What we can say is that student safety is a top priority and that all reports involving student safety are taken seriously. And this is what the Department of Education had to say. ED launched an investigation into a Washington state school district after a female wrestler was allegedly sexually assaulted during a match against a male competitor, and the district failed to respond to her reports. The Trump administration will not tolerate this conduct. The allegations in this case are sickening. Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights Kimberly Ritchie said, while the district may prioritize ideological agendas over the safety and dignity of its students, the Trump administration will not tolerate such conduct. And that's exactly what they're doing, prioritizing their ideology over the safety of the female athletes. It's absolutely unacceptable. She says that her department will enforce Title IX to ensure that women and girls have safe, equal access to educational programs and opportunities, and that allegations of sexual assault are addressed promptly and fully. Linda McMahon, Education Secretary, said too many women have been injured, harassed, and deprived of opportunities they work hard for. Title IX is the law. Follow it or face consequences. And thank goodness Title IX is restored to its original purpose, unlike what was going to happen if Kamala became president. And while Biden was in office, they did actually start making changes to Title IX, which is very scary, but it's been restored. What does she say? Yep, that's where we're at with that story. So, and this is what the WIAA had to say. It says the WIAA remains committed to following Washington state law, which permits student athletes to participate in sports consistent with the gender with which they identify. So that's what they're committed to. No, they're not committed to the safety, maintaining the safety of female athletes and every athlete. What they're committed to is ensuring that people can participate according to gender identity. They're not committed to ensuring that their schools report allegations of SA in a timely manner. No. Their priority is that you can compete according to your gender identity and ruin women's sports. Their priority isn't even to warn female athletes when they're about to compete against a man. That wasn't even showing common courtesy isn't a priority either. WIAA. They've made that very clear. So I'm glad, the Department of Education is investigating this, and that I hope they're going to be held accountable. The school district, WIAA, the school itself, for allowing this to happen in the first place and not even trying to support the female athlete. I know that she responded and said that she's very happy about this investigation by the Department of Education. She welcomes the investigation. And, people were commending Callie for coming forward because that video is out there. And you can imagine it's a humiliating experience that what happened to her is out there now. But she decided to come forward, and she was brave enough to report this. She reported it on the day to her coach, and her parents wrote an email as well reporting it. So, I absolutely commend Callie for coming forward with this. And now he's out of the competition at least. So no other female athlete is going to have to worry about him doing what he, did to her. It's all alleged, I know, but there were wrestling experts who came forward and said that this isn't normal. Those actions, what he did, the reaching in between the legs and what followed, they said that wasn't normal. Even a novice wrestler, you know, if they did something like that by accident, it would be, they would correct it instantly. And that's not what happened according to Callie. It wasn't a situation where something, you know, his hand went where it shouldn't have gone by accident and he corrected it. No. And I don't see how being a novice results in SA. That's not how wrestling works. I'm not an expert, far from an expert, but I don't think being a novice should result in SA. So I really hope the police investigate this thoroughly and Callie gets the answers that she deserves and the justice that she deserves. So last story, I wanted to end on a more light-hearted note. I wanted to discuss the Olympics recently. And, you know, there's been a lot of wokery at the Winter Olympics. I hope none of that comes in 2028. I really do. So let's see, just before we move on, female wrestlers should invent a move called the nut shot to suss out any male trans players. Very, very good idea there. See any more comments? Unfortunately, it appears it's necessary. Oh, no problem. No problem, Maxi. Yeah, thanks for joining. I appreciate that. And you guys can always watch the replay. I come on here and I'm so happy to see people have even logged on. Half the time I'm expecting to just be by myself and just to get the story out, and then you guys can watch it when you're available. But it's so nice to see that people have actually logged on as well and are able to catch the live. Yeah, everyone, Lacey says, everyone needs to stay abreast of their local bills and schools. It is everywhere, and we cannot allow laws passed to protect men over women. Yeah, to protect somebody's gender identity over biological sex. Makes no sense whatsoever. So last story before we head off. I keep pressing the wrong thing. Oh my goodness. This is about this Amber Glenn, bless her. I'm not here to, I think she came last in, you know, her final event, which is not the best, but she really has gone there. Just her main concern is everyone needs to know this is what, you know, my sexuality is. Everybody needs to know. That's all that matters. Rather than focusing on what she was there to do. I think that's where the issue lies. Excuse me. So she's a figure skater. Let's take a look at this actually. This kind of sums up.
There was an ice dancer who came out before me and was an absolute inspiration. And I've been able to get to know more queer women in the sports and just all around space of the queer community that have really made it feel like I'm accepted and comfortable in this world. It's been a weight off my shoulders. And I know regardless of whatever results of whatever I do on the ice, that I'm able to speak about my journey and my process truthfully and inspire others to do the same and not feel as alone in who they are. And that's one of the things that has kept me in this sport for so many years is the stories that I'm told by fans, by other skaters, that something I did or said might have helped them and feel more comfortable in themselves or their environments. And it really has been freeing for me. I had people who inspired me. There was an ice dancer who came out before me and
Sorry, guys. I did it again. So you're going there and you're waving a trans flag. It's just a bit much. It's a bit much. And of course, she came there acting as if she fled America and, you know, when I go back home, what awaits me when I go back home? All the oppression as a bi person, all the oppression, you know, that the community are facing at the moment. It just sounds so ridiculous and so ungrateful. You're not coming from a country where people could only dream of even being able to compete in these sort of disciplines that are not cheap. All the, you know, the outfits, the skates, all of that. And if you're doing skiing and those sort of disciplines, it's not cheap. So she's very privileged, actually. And she can't recognize that. She's coming, it's like, again, if I can give myself a label, then I can be oppressed and be a victim. Why is that the goal? So, you know, unfortunately, she didn't have a very good time at the Olympics. It didn't end, you know, too well. Oh no, sorry, that's the wrong one. Okay, let me double check. Yeah. So American figure skater Amber Glenn, 1/3 of the trio known as the Blade Angels, had a rough performance in the women's singles short program at the Winter Olympics on Tuesday. Glenn, 3-time reigning US champion, so she's obviously very accomplished, was in the mix for a medal until the very end of her routine. She landed a huge triple axel, which led into a triple flip, triple toe loop. However, Glenn was just a little off kilter and bailed out of the triple loop, which to me sounds more like a mental issue, like not a mental issue, but you know, a lot of it is mental, where you just have to be very focused on what you're about to do and go through it without any fear whatsoever. And I think maybe she kind of, what's the word? Where they say, you know, I choked or whatever. I think that's a lot of it is a mental thing. Anyone who's done sports, you know that a lot of it is just being confident to do what you need to do. And, you know, if you doubt yourself or just, I think also just not being focused, because clearly she came with other priorities. That's what it looked like to me anyway. So it's unfortunate, and I wish her all the best, and I'm sure she'll come back stronger next time. But I think if she can come with a better approach next time, just be focused on what you're there to do. And I don't think it's appropriate to be politicizing everything and having certain flags. Where's the American flag? That should be your priority. Athletes have their own flags representing their countries, and they're proud to represent their countries. That's how it should be, rather than, you know, going there preaching at people about being bi or whatever. She received no points, as the double loop became an invalid element. She lost 7 or 8 points with the bailout and nixed her chances of reaching the medal podium when the free skate competition ends on Thursday. Glenn was emotional as she came off the ice, telling her coach I had it. Wow. And those were her scores. She said, the world has ended for me many times, and yet tomorrow still comes. She wrote Wednesday in an Instagram post with a picture of a smiling dog. Keep going. Well, that's a good attitude, I would say. You know, when you suffer a loss like that, in a competition, at least she's not completely defeated. So that's good to hear. See what you guys the OG rainbow. You mean the original the original purpose of the rainbow? Is that what you're referring to? Yeah. Melanis. Here, Irene, the Olympics is a national team competition. Yeah. So the only flag you should be concerned about is the American flag. If you're representing the US, I think that should be the only flag you're concerned about. The athletes are especially special. Yeah. So I wish her all the best, but is it a coincidence? You let me know. Do you think it's a coincidence that someone of her ability, an athlete of her ability, she seemed to be on track, and then just at the last minute, it all went downhill for her? Do you think it's a coincidence that her focus seems to be on other things, and then this happens? Or, maybe it was just not her time. But I do think it is linked. When you're going there with a negative view of your own country, of who you're representing, that could have an impact on you when it's time to perform and you don't have any room for mistakes. That could have an impact if your focus is elsewhere. That's all I'm saying. So I think we can leave it there. Is there anything else I wanted to share with you guys? I think that's about it. Any more? And of course, she's also for men in women's sports, which is very disappointing. Wow. I saw a comment recently saying trans athlete bans affect trans spectators and fans who only watch sports if a trans person is competing. Really? Wow. Oh, yeah. She was saying the queer community. That was what she was referring to herself as part of the queer community. It seems like a very generic term, or a term that's open to interpretation, in my opinion. Yeah, that's yeah. I guess the trans fans love seeing men beat up on women, because that's what we're seeing when we have men in women's sports. We saw that recently, just 2024 in the boxing. I was supposed to cover Imam Khalif admitting that he is indeed a man, admitting that he is male. And what else is there to say with that story? I might still actually do a video on it, because I want to talk about all of the women who competed against him who were ignored. They told us that this is like nothing I've ever experienced before. The way this guy punches, because you can punch twice as hard if you're male, is nothing I've experienced before while competing against women. There was the Mexican who he fought against. There was the female athlete who he trained with in Bulgaria, I believe. She came forward and said, this is a man. And, they were like lying to her and saying, oh no, Iman looks that way because he grew up in the mountains. Some nonsense that they came up with. And no one listened to these women. And now you want to act as if, oh, we didn't know. Yes, you did. And, you know, we all have eyes. His coach even admitted it. The IBA did 2 tests. I mean, I could go on. So I may still do a video about it, even though it's kind of out of date. But I do want to stress the importance of actually listening to the women, to the female athletes for a change. A man says he's a woman and everybody listens and takes that as, you know, the truth and turns everything upside down to accommodate that. But a woman says, I don't want to compete against a man. I'm uncomfortable with him in the locker room. All of this, it's dangerous. I don't feel safe. And her words are ignored. That's the state of affairs. But it is changing. We're seeing things turn around, and I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to see things turning around now. Ever since Trump signed the executive order, you know, we've been wondering, when are we going to see this become a thing of the past? And we are getting there. But then you hear stories about, you know, the female wrestler and what she went through recently. It's like, this is still happening. But anyway, so thank you so much for joining me for the live today. Really appreciate it. Thank you for all your comments and all of your insight. And I'm going to try and do a few more lives because I think it's just a lot more straightforward. And thank you to the lovely mods, Jenna, Alexis. Really appreciate you taking the time to hop on to the live today to help out with the moderating and everything. So yeah, I've been here for an hour, so I think that's enough time. Be sure to check out the replay. If you're watching on the replay, thank you for joining. And take care of yourselves, guys. I will see you in the next video.